Hi there. So this time I'm going to tell you a story, and you can gather from it what you want, but I will conclude it with kind of what my basic idea is of what I'm telling you. And this is something that happened about, 10, 12 years ago. I was once studying to go into the ministry. So in my first year of ministerial school, I was going to a conference that was going to be in Santa Barbara, California. And I had everything ready to go. It was in my car. All my bags were in my car and everything I needed, except for just what I was going to need to get up early in the morning, get myself ready to go, and be gone. Except for I forgot to set my alarm. So I woke up that morning at 9 a.m. And I was amazed that I even had a good night's sleep because typically I don't sleep real well the night before I'm going to go on a trip. But I slept really well and I woke up at 9 a.m. and I had about 2 hours to get to the airport. And we're supposed to be there 2 hours ahead of time to get through security. Well, I thought, you know what? I'm just going to surrender, which is what I do whenever I get in a situation where there just isn't any other way to do what I'm doing. And I just surrendered and I said, God, I'm just going to get there and get there safely. And if I have to get a new flight, I will. I'm just going to get there, and I'll get there, take my time, and be real steady about what I'm doing, but I'm just going to, forget about rushing because I wanted to get there safely. So I took my shower, put my face on, got my hair all fixed up, and got dressed, and I was on the road. And interestingly enough, it only took me a half an hour. Not even that. It took me 20 minutes to get to the airport, which normally it would take me 45 minutes from where I lived. It was just like traffic parted its ways, and I just got to the airport. I parked out in the park. It's called the Pikes Peak parking lot. It's way out on the edge of the DIA, Denver International Airport. And it's, you just keep your car out there for many days for a lot less money than you would if you went into a covered parking place. And I just happened to find a parking place that was real close to where the shuttle was. And the shuttle was just about ready to leave. So I hopped into the shuttle and got out to the airport, and they dropped me off at the curb, and I did curbside checking, and I went in and got right through security. And at DIA, security is like you have to zigzag to get through security, and then you have to go down an escalator to get to the trains, and the trains will take you to the different concourses, and then you got to get from whatever concourse you're in, you got to take it up to an escalator to get up to the level of the concourse you're in, and then you got to get to the gate, which is yet another. It's a big airport. So I had to do all that, and I got through security fine, got right to my gate, just as they were shutting the door to the plane, and the plane was on time. So I did all that in 2 hours, and I was astounded. But that's what happens when you're in a mindful state of mind. It's like you kind of stop time and space, and you kind of get to where you're going. And if you just forget about, the shoulda, woulda, couldas, or the have tos, or the I've got tos, or the, panic, and you let go of that, and you just go, okay, I'm just in the moment of here and now, and this is what it is. So I got on the plane, and while I was there, we're flying to LAX, and there's this little girl who was about a year and a half old, and she was so sweet, and she was walking up and down the aisle with her mom, and every time she came near me, she'd stop and just look right up at me, and I thought, how lovely. So I just told her how beautiful she was and how she will grow up to be an incredibly wonderful young lady, and how just told her things like that. And then she'd walk away, and she came back 5 different times, actually, 5 times total. She came to me, and her mom said, boy, she's really into you. And I said, I am so honored to have her attention, because children that age they're like animals, so they don't have any filters. So if you get that kind of attention from a child and or from animals, it's a real honor. Consider it an honor. And I did. So we all got to LAX fine, got there in time, and then I went to Enterprise Rent-A-Car, took a shuttle over to Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and the young woman was so kind there, and she upgraded me to a middle-sized car. I just ordered a compact car, and she gave me a mid-size because I was going to do quite a bit of driving. And then I drove up to along the PCH, which is the Pacific Coast Highway, because the purpose was I could have flown, I could have taken a commuter flight up to Santa Barbara, but I wanted to drive along the ocean because really that was really why I went, because I'm a water girl and I love the ocean. Specifically, so far from what my experience is, I love the Pacific Ocean just because it's so blue, and usually wherever I go, the Pacific Ocean is quite warm, but it's beautiful. And so I got to take that road and just enjoy that. And everywhere I stopped to grab a bite to eat or whatever I needed to do, get a bottle of water, everyone was kind. Everyone was pleasant. So I got to Santa Barbara, and we had I think it was about a 4-day conference, and it was very wonderful. And during the time we were there, um, I had a term paper that was due for a class that I was taking, and it was my final term paper. And I thought it was due 2 days after the conference was over, so I was just going to, after the conference was over, I was going to rent a hotel room somewhere and just write my paper. But then I found out that it was due 2 days before the conference was completed. So I knew I was going to have to finish it there at the conference when we were not studying, and we were studying a good portion of the time, or working together or doing whatever we needed to do. We were there to meet some of our professors. We were there to meet all the deans, to meet all the other students that were brand new like me at that time, and it was a wonderful time. But I was going to need to write my paper at night, except for the rooms we were in were somewhat outdated, and there were no electrical outlets with three-prong plugs. So I didn't have an adapter. So I went to the office and I said, "Here's my dilemma. Can you help me with this?" And so she was going to put me in the community center, but they closed at 11. It was almost that time, and I had till the next night at midnight to get this paper turned in. So she says, "Follow me." And she was this little tiny woman. She was about this big. I'm 5'5.5". Gotta put that half inch in there. But she was about 5'5", and she's little, and she just zoomed on through that whole area. We went upstairs, downstairs, across a plaza, and she took me into the Catholic Church, which I hadn't been in yet. I'm not Catholic, but I went in there, and it was this beautiful sanctuary. And she took me up to the platform where normally, the priest would be giving its Sunday talk. And I went up there, and there was a table and a chair at the back wall. And she says, "I'll just set you up right here." And she dragged this great big lamp behind her, which was about twice as tall as she was. It looked like something from like the medieval times. It was all wrought iron, and it was beautiful. And she just dragged this thing behind me and plugged it in so I'd have a little bit more light. And she said, "Normally, this will be open 24 hours, but just so you feel safe and so you won't be disturbed, I'm just going to go ahead and lock the door. And anybody that wants to get in, they'll just think that it's closed, and they won't even think about it." So she locked the door, and she said, "Whenever you're ready to leave, just go ahead and shut the light off here and lock the door, and it'll lock behind you." I'm like, "Thank you so much." So I did that night, and then I did it again the next night. But I was there that night till about 3 a.m. And at the time, I was just going to finish the paper that I was going to, I'd already started, but I was looking around me at everything there in the chapel. There were stained glass windows of the Jesus' story all around the edges, like a horizontal story all around the edges. And there was this beautiful hand carved in wood sculpture of Jesus on the cross right at the center of that platform. And I thought, well, that isn't really what I believe in Jesus, because I believe in the life of Jesus and what Jesus' teachings were. But it was still very inspiring because there was art all over this place. It was called La Casa de la Maria. It was a lovely, lovely place. And over me was a statue of Jesus, and he was, I've got to put this down, he was standing there with one hand up and one hand like this, straight out. And the hand that was straight out on a horizontal was like over my head. And I felt like I had the blessings of Christ over me, because I was writing a story. I ended up writing a story about how Jesus was a prophet for Islam, because I was studying the wisdom of Islam. in ministerial school, we studied different religions so that when we served people from different religions, we could have a greater understanding about who they were and what they believed in. And then we'd have a more of a commonality, more of a oneness with, the different people from the different places that we were, and the differences, so to bring us all into a greater state of oneness. So I loved this class, and I loved the professor. He was just absolutely incredible. But I had to have this paper done by the next night. But I rewrote it. I rewrote the whole paper about the experience that I had just had. I talked about the whole thing, how I just messed up, and I talked about the whole experience. Practically missing my flight and getting there and everything, but how it all just kind of came together, being in the here and now, and how everybody just seemed to kind of help me all along the way. And so I was there till 3:30 that night, then went through classes the next day, went back again after classes were over, finished my paper and got it completed and sent it to him and got it to my professor by 2 minutes before midnight. So I got it on time. And the interesting thing was I heard a knocking outside the office where I had to go to get good reception so I could get a good signal where I could get my computer to send that off. I had to be there in the office, and I heard a knocking, and it sounded like somebody was trying to get out. And then I remembered there was a little teeny tiny meditation chapel that they shut the doors at midnight, and I just asked the woman, who's the same woman who helped me the night before, to get into the chapel that I ended up writing the paper in. I said, "Did you just by any chance lock the chapel?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "I think there's somebody locked in there." Sure enough, it was somebody had been praying in there in the dark, and she had by mistake locked, so she let her out. So that was a whole other good thing that happened. So I went through the whole conference. It was lovely. And then when I went to leave Santa Barbara, I wanted to stop and get some chocolates for some people who were taking care of my animals, because I had 3 dogs and 3 cats at the time. And I had 2 different people who loved chocolate, and I went to this chocolatier in Santa Barbara. But she was supposed to be open at 11. She didn't open until 11:30. My flight was at 4:20, and I still had to drive down to get to LAX in plenty of time. But I left there at 12 with chocolates in hand and ready to go. And I thought, I have a little time. I think I have a little more time with my watch. And there was a park just off the highway. And I thought, I'm going to go there and just check out the ocean. Well, it was just a park. It was just some place to kind of have lunch or whatever. But I walked all the way through the park. It was pretty far. And I ended up going up over there were railroad ties. And then there was like a little cliff right there. And it wasn't meant for people like me to do this, but I did it anyway. But I just sat down on that spot. There were people walking down the beach way below me, because it was a cliff pretty high up. And I just watched the ocean waves, and still to this day, I can see these ocean waves and hear them, because it was like this meditative state that I went into, and how beautiful and how that fed me, because I didn't get to spend a lot of time by the ocean like I would have liked to. So I went, uh-oh, I got 45 minutes. I've been here 45 minutes. I better get on the road. Well, part of the way down the road, I saw a DHW shoe store, and I thought, I need a new pair of shoes. I got time. So I went there, and there were only 2 people in the store, just the people that worked there. Bought a pair of shoes, threw my shoes away in the trash, because I needed a new pair real badly, and felt like a new woman, because you know how we are when we get a new pair of shoes. And got back on the road, got down into LA, and I thought, you know what, I'm hungry. So I stopped briefly in an actual neighborhood, like where there were homes around me, and I stopped there and had, I had some cheese and an apple that I'd bought at a store, and some water, and I just stopped to get a bite to eat. And I got back on the highway again, and I thought, I don't recognize anything. And I could not find the map, and this was before they had GPSs in every car. So I couldn't find the map to get me back to Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And I thought, I don't recognize any of the buildings or anything around me. And I was there in LA, and I kind of remember a lot of that stuff when I'm going places. And I thought, I don't think I'm on the right highway. And I asked Spirit, I said, am I too far south? And the answer immediately was, no, you're not too far south. It's always kind of that, real clear answer. No, you're not too far south. I thought, okay. I kept going, and I thought, you know what? I don't think I'm in the right place. So I got off the road and went to the right, and I went several blocks till I got to an area that, look, these buildings probably were built in 1920, 1930. They'd been there a long time. And they were kind of artsy places and boutiques and some little restaurants. And I found a realty office, and I thought that would be perfect because they would certainly know how to tell me how to get to the airport. So I stopped in there, and this was woman's first day. She made me a map from MapQuest, so I knew how to get there, and offered me a brownie and some lemonade. I'm like, thank you so much. Again, everyone was kind. Everyone was lovely. And just as I was leaving, the owner to the realty office showed up, and she goes, oh, you just have to go 2 blocks to the north here. Just turn your car around, go 2 blocks to the north, take a left, and that's the entrance onto the highway that'll take you right to the airport. Great. By that time, it was 3:10, and the highway was bumper to bumper traffic because it's LA. So I was in a panic because, again, my flight was supposed to leave like at 4:20. So I thought, okay. Then I saw a big sign, Century Boulevard, and I knew that was like a major road. So I got off on Century Boulevard on that exit, and it was just warehouses. It was just this straight road of warehouses. It just block after block after block after block of warehouses. And at the end of that, right in front of me, was Enterprise Rent-A-Car. Bam! So I drove right in. There's a guy right there ready to check out the car and everything. He goes, hey, there's a shuttle just about ready to leave for the airport. Bam, bam, bam. Timing was perfect. I jumped on the shuttle. The shuttle driver was perfect. He was great. Got me to the airport. You know, it was a Wednesday, and traffic is not too bad. Air traffic isn't too heavy on a Wednesday at 5 o'clock in the evening, or I guess it was more like 4 o'clock in the evening. Got through security right away, and I found out that my gate was at the very, very end of the concourse that I had to go to. So I ran all the way to the very end. And when I got there, the plane hadn't even arrived yet. I had 20 minutes left to go. Don't know how I did that. But again, that's what happens when you're in the here and now and you surrender and you're in a mindful state. And I sat down, and there weren't too many people around me, but I just started to laugh because it was just like laughing out loud, and I thought, I can't believe how this stuff works. So I sat there and I asked Spirit quietly to myself. I said, when I'm on the highway and I asked that I was too far south, and you said, no, I wasn't too far south, why did you tell me I was too far south? He said, and the answer was, you weren't too far south. You were on the wrong highway. You asked the wrong question. So I laughed out loud again, and by that time, there were a lot of people around, and they're just looking at me. So I came back to Denver, and when I arrived in Denver and looked at my Facebook messages the next day, there's a message from a guy I used to date, and I needed him like 3 different times over the years. We'd have like time number 1 together, time number 2 together, time number 3 together. And here he was contacting me again, and he'd found out that I was on Facebook, and he actually joined Facebook just so he could contact me. 4 days later, we had what we call our 4th first date. And that was my 4th first date with my husband, because we got together then. We never left each other from that point forward, and we were married 5 years later. But we lived together for those years, and then 5 years later we got married. So it was an amazing, that time of being in a mindful state. It was an amazing time of being in the here and now. And that lasted me for 2 weeks, and my awareness was completely different than what it normally is. I was just hyper aware of everything, everything was good. Everyone I met was wonderful. It's just like the best of me met the best of everyone else, the best circumstances. And no matter what I needed to do, there was someone there to help me, and they were just so willing. And there were even many, many more experiences within that time frame, and I'm just telling you some of it. But it was a remarkable time, and I love living that way. And so that's what I try to do, is to live in this state of mindfulness, in this state of here and now, where I really recognize the God in whoever's in front of me, whether it be a child or an animal or another person or a group of people or whatever the circumstance might be, knowing full well that whatever that is there in service. Everything's there in service. Everything is here to support us in whatever it is we're doing. We just have to be in alignment with it. We just have to be in agreement with it. And so life is good. So I leave that with you to just, and this painting behind me is all about, in this same chapter from Alchemy Spirit, and this painting is on abundance. So that was an abundant experience. It just kept getting better and better and better and better. And no matter what it is I did and whoever I met, it was just like everything came together for good. And it still lights me up today to think about it and how wonderful it is. And so in this painting, this is, I just think of red representing abundance because it's powerful, it's meaningful. Of course, there's a lot of metallic gold paint in here too, but you just start at the center and it becomes more of the same, and it turns into different patterns and different textures. And it just, again, like all the other things, it turns back into itself and it becomes this exquisite spiral, this exquisite pattern of beauty. And that's how life is when we live in this way. And so I like to live that way. I'd like to live that way a lot more. And I just invite you to think about, where in your life has life been so magnificent and wonderful? Because every single day has magnificence to it. Every single experience, no matter what it is, and just be in the moment with it, be in the beauty of it, be in the magnificence of it, the abundance of it, the glory of it, in the love of it. And so I just leave you always, as I did with my grandma used to say, love you bunches, and we're all in this together. Till next time, take care.